So as you can see, we've got our jack stand here supporting the front end. This is going to allow me to level the vehicle side to side as well as front to rear. So I'm working on my suspension measurements and putting in this new axle and suspension. I can have the support that I need as well as get fine-tuned adjustment and the location of everything. Hi, welcome to Off-Road Religion. Today in the garage we're going to be talking about jack stands. The purpose of the jack stands is hold up the vehicle, make it stable and secure so that we can work on it, whether we're next to it or underneath it. We need to consider the safety behind them. In front of me I've got a couple of different ways of securing the vehicle, stabilizing it to work. The most generic is going to be wood blocks or even cinder blocks. You might have seen a lot of times it used, and these are 4x4 blocks that easily give you some additional height. You can build them in a cribbing fashion, much like building a game of Jenga underneath your vehicle. You're going to just alternate those cross pieces up until you get the height that you need. However, the stability isn't there as these pieces aren't tied to the next level below them or above them. You may have seen or heard people using cinder blocks. Now, cinder blocks are inherently dangerous because of the composition of the material. It's fragile and it can crumble under weight. But again, cinder blocks are not a safe option. Now, from the factory, we might have a bottle jack like this. It's a screw bottle jack. It's given so you can change your tire. Minimal in its purpose and abilities. It's got a small base, about 4 inches square. It does have a screw adjustment, so that way it would lift the vehicle. However, it's a very small unit. It's short. It's only designed to hold those vehicles up with the factory tire, factory conditions, so that you can just change that flat and get on your way. Also, it shows on the warning sticker not to use it for securing the vehicle to work on. It's a temporary option that's provided for you. Now to the hydraulic jack. This could be in the form of a floor jack or like this here, a bottle jack. There's hydraulic fluid inside that by way of a piston and this lever, it raises up the top end. And then also a bleed screw to release that pressure to allow it to go down. Now whether it's a floor jack or the bottle jack, they're inherently dangerous to use as a support system because of the seals or the ability for it to fail in the bleed screw or the seals, which would drop down that item. Additionally, it could just bleed down over time and lower while you're underneath it, preventing you from getting out. So we can use these to initially raise the vehicle to apply our jack stands in the positions that we need to support it, but we don't want to utilize the hydraulic jack as a system to maintain the support while we're in or underneath it. So looking at the jack stands, for most stock vehicles, something like this, the 2-ton, would work. It has a minimum height of 11 inches, a maximum height of 17 inches. It's got a small base, 6.5 by 7, and each of these notches is 3/4 of an inch separated apart. So you can raise it in increments of 3/4 of an inch. With these different jagged openings, there's a cam inside here that pushes in against that block and resists it from coming down. One thing to consider is recently there's a jack manufacturer that have these failing for the cam or these tabs, and so you want to check to see if there's any recalls on your jack. But again, for maybe a stock vehicle, low height, this could keep you by in supporting your vehicle. For those of us that have larger tires, a lift, or a combination of the two, now we have a much higher reach that we need to get to the bottom of that suspension component or to the frame. Now, if you have a 40-inch tire, the midpoint of that is 20 inches approximately. So it's got quite a bit of reach that this smaller jack isn't going to handle. As well as if you're trying to reach the frame, which is much higher, and to work on the suspension or removing the tires, So now we move up to the larger jack. That's going to give us a much higher reach. This 6-ton jack has a minimum height of 15 and a maximum of 24 inches. Again, all the slots on the side are 3/4 of an inch spaced apart. So we have some adjustment 3/4 of an inch at a time. The base is a little bit larger, 9.5 by 10.5. So this will get us to those larger reaches for maybe those tires are 44 inches, getting to that bottom of the suspension component of the axle. This could probably work great to support that. However, if we're going to be working on the suspension and the axle, we're going to be removing them, as I am on the Sport Track, we're going to need to be able to reach the frame. So this isn't going to be high enough, as the Sport Track is a 30-inch plus frame height. I want to utilize something that's a little bit more stable and secure and not combination methods. I need something that reaches a little bit higher. I thought back to when I was an electrician. We had those big wooden spools that held our copper cable or our fiber optics, and we had these large jack stands to hold them up and to unroll those spools. Also, pipe fitters have to have large jacks that can hold heavy pipes to be able to weld them together. So I looked into that. So here we have a pipe fitter or electrical jack stand. This has 2 levels of adjustment. Also, it's got a wider base. This model that I purchased is portable, so it folds up and allows me to store it into a smaller space and a carry handle for convenience. So this has a couple of different ways that you can adjust it. You can pull on the collar to allow that sleeve to be raised at a rough height where you need it. So the way that this is secured, the collar fits through this large washer. The washer being at an angle and the collar running through it puts pressure on the sides and prevents it from pushing down. Also, there's a set screw that would screw into the collar to provide additional support and keep that from dropping down. So to raise it, we can just pull up on the collar. To lower it, we need to lift up on the collar and then lift up on the washer slightly so that it's horizontal, and then we can lower that collar down until we need it. So the second level of adjustment comes in the top. The top portion has Acme threads built into it. Slips in the collar, and so that when we have our item supported, we can then use this screw to make the adjustments that we need and get that extra height. This is going to come in really handy if we're working on designing a suspension. We need to take measurements off of the frame to the ground, and we need to level our vehicle front to back or side to side. So we can get those fine-tuned adjustments made through this. You can get these larger jack stands in a multitude of sizes, either fixed or collapsible as well. So they can start out in the lower 20-inch range and go up from there, and they can hold capacities of 2,500 to 4,500 pounds. Many different options and suppliers out there for these. Now to compare these different jack stands, on the lower end with a 2-ton model, we have an 11 to 17-inch height range. We have about a 6-inch base. For the 6-ton, we have a 15 to 24-inch reach with about a 10-inch base. And then here with the larger jack stand, we have a 22-inch base with a 29 to 49-inch reach. This is going to be much better for reaching that higher frame height and supporting the vehicle when I'm working on it. So some safety considerations we need to look into when utilizing jack stands is the vehicle itself. It's on wheels, has the ability to roll. So we want to make sure that we're securing the vehicle. First thing that we can do is in an automatic transmission, place the vehicle in park. That's going to lock the engine, transmission, drive shaft to the axle to prevent the tires from rolling. However, there still might be a little bit of movement in that. If the vehicle is a manual, we want to take that transmission and place it into reverse. That's going to tie the engine, transmission, drive shaft to the axle and keep those tires from moving. Also, another thing that we can do is place the vehicle's emergency brake. That's going to lock those rear brakes on the rear axle and keep it from rolling. One thing to consider if we've utilized for the transmission, either an automatic placing it in park or a manual placing it in reverse, or using the parking brake to lock the brakes in the rear axle. If we've lifted that rear axle up, we no longer have those tires positioned on the ground to keep it from rolling. Even though they're locked, we still now just move them off the ground, allowing the vehicle to roll with those front tires. So in addition to the transmission locking it out, the parking brake, we want to block the wheels. This will prevent any rolling. Rule of thumb is if you're going to jack up one corner, you place blocking at the opposite corner. So if we're going to be lifting up the left rear tire, we want to block the right front tire. This would be accomplished by using either a wheel chock or a block of wood or some large block to prevent it from rolling. We want to place it in the front of the tire and rear of the tire to keep it from rolling forward or back. So now that we have our vehicle blocked and we've lifted it off the ground, we can utilize our jacks at a place that's going to be secure on the frame or the suspension. We want to make sure that when we're in position, we give the vehicle a little wiggle from a safe distance and location, so that way we can check to see if there's any potential for misalignment and we need to readjust. So let's go ahead and take a look on our Sport Trac of how we've set up these new taller jacks. So as you can see, we've got one jack already in place on the left rear frame rail. We'll go ahead and put in position the right side. Lifted it up, that washer secured that collar. We can tighten that down now and make our initial adjustments. All right, so secure.